Hey, what's up, everybody? Garrett Brumley here with Duty to Train. I wanted to talk with you about something my priest talked about last week in his homily. I went to church this morning, but also went to church last Sunday, and I attend a really cool church. I prayed quite a bit about finding a church where they talk about real stuff because a lot of times you go to a church and it's like all feely good stuff, but frankly, in today's society, like there's a lot of crazy things going on, and the Monsignor, the head priest at the church that I attend, my family attends, he talks about like real world stuff. He talks about, and he keeps it appropriate because he knows that there's a bunch of kids in the church, right? So you can't be like graphic about things. And you only have to be, right? Like people are smart enough. You don't have to be obtuse about talking about these things. But he does not shy away from talking about the things that matter in today's society. And he was talking about how it seems like churches around the world are conforming to the culture rather than forcing the individuals who want to be a part of the parish to conform to the principles of the parish. And he mentioned something, and I didn't know about this, so I looked it up, and I want to just share this with you because it's frankly super troubling. And at the end, I wanted to just share something that I think will be a little bit hopeful. But all right. So just going to throw this down here. He was talking about how the Church of England was saying how the Our Father is problematic because it has patriarchal connotations, right? And I was like, no way. And so I looked it up, and sure enough, this was written Friday, July 7th, 2023. So this came out like 3 weeks ago. And the Archbishop of York tells General Synod, I don't even know what that means, but that the Our Father has patriarchal connotations. Like, this is how far we've come. And I talked to my business partner about this. And frankly, I'll just be honest, like, it's not super easy talking about this. Like, when you're trying to build a business, it's far easier to just like shy away from these societal issues because they like tear at the fabric of our society right now. And I'm going to tie this into like the hopeful thing at the end. But this is how far we've come. That there are bishops, the Archbishop of York, saying that the Lord's Prayer is problematic. So I just want to run through this. I actually haven't read this. I like doing stuff. I just kind of looked up the article, and I wanted to just I do a Second Amendment research, but I like to go through things together so that you know that I'm not, I don't know, picking and choosing stuff, right? I picked this article because it was talking about what I wanted to talk about, but I mean, this is from The Guardian. And so let's just go through it real quick. Archbishop of York made the comment during a speech about the need for unity. Stephen Cottrell. Archbishop of York has suggested that opening words of the Lord's Prayer, i.e., the Our Father, recited by Christians all over the world for 2,000 years, may be problematic because of their patriarchal association. In his opening address to a society or a meeting of the Church of England's ruling body, the General Synod. Okay, so that's what it is. Church of England's ruling body, the General Synod. Okay, so it's like just a group of, okay, all right. Stephen Cottrell dwelt on the words Our Father, the start of the prayer based on Matthew 6:9-13 and Luke 11:2-4 in the New Testament. I know the word father is problematic for those whose experience of earthly fathers has been destructive and abusive, and for all of us who have labored rather too much from an oppressively patriarchal grip on life, he said. Okay, so because some people, I'm gonna take this the same way that I do with all of my other like Second Amendment. Let's just go through this. So what this guy is saying, I know the word father is problematic for those whose experience of earthly fathers has been destructive and abusive. So that means you should take out, because some people have had a negative idea of their own father, right? This guy says he believes in God, and God is supposed to be the most loving, the most caring father of all time. And we're not supposed to call him father because some people, their earthly father has, I'm sure he's probably talking about like, And this, if you're, I don't know, watching this with kids, I'm just going to get graphic here. So if you want to shut this off, just a little bit of a warning. Give you a second to pause. I mean, he's talking about, like the rape of children by men, right? And sexual exploitation, like just straight up physical abuse, not even like sexual, but just, like fathers beating their children, right? So that means that we should get rid of the idea of God being our father when literally that is what it says in the Bible. Like God is our father. Nobody goes to the Father except, it's littered throughout the Bible. I don't even know the Bible that well yet. And I know that, let's just look that up real quick. So I'm not like just spitballing and throwing random stuff out there, but Jesus talking about God the Father. Bible quotes. Here are just a few verses that describe a father's role. Psalm 103, as a father shows compassion to his children, so the Lord shows compassion to those who fear him. So it's comparing a father to the Lord. Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in a discipline and instruction of the Lord. So talking about how fathers, make sure, be a good father, right? Don't be a bad one. The righteous who walks in his integrity, blessed are his children after him. Fathers, do not provoke your children lest they become discouraged. Hear, O sons, of father's instruction, and be attentive, that you may gain insight, for I give you good precepts. Do not forsake my teaching. Hear, O sons, a father's instruction, and be attentive, that you may gain insight, for I give you good precepts. He's talking about, this is like God talking about himself. Do not forsake my teaching. He's calling himself Father. Okay? And I don't have to go at John 3, John 1 through 4. I have no greater joy than that to hear that my children are walking in the truth. Behold, children are a heritage from the Lord. The fruit of the womb a reward. Like arrows in the hand of a warrior are the children of one's youth. Blessed is the man who fills his quiver with them. He shall not be put to shame when he speaks with his enemies and this guy's talking about how that's problematic. This is the problem today. This is the issue with being a man, right? You can't be a strong man because that's patriarchal. No, it's not. It almost makes me emotional to even talk about. I was seriously impacted. I can actually, I'll just give my own personal experience on this. My dad killed himself when he was 39. I was 11. And I had a really hard time. This was something that my brother, I'm going to get emotional talking about this. I wasn't planning on going this route, but it was one of the reasons that my brother and I were really, really close, is because we never really had a father like that. I have a stepdad, he's just never really taken on, I guess, that kind of role. We've never had that super duper close relationship. We've gotten a lot closer. I feel like him and I have gotten even closer since Phelan has passed, which is really cool. But Phelan and I were always kind of in a way, fathers to each other, because we were the only male person that the other person ever, we both kind of looked up to each other in a way. And that's what a son is supposed to do for a dad, or that's what a dad is supposed to do for his son. He's supposed to be the guy that the son can look up to and emulate, and he's supposed to protect his family. And it sucks not having a dad, because as a young boy, you have nothing to emulate, and it blows. It sucks to grow up as a young man and not have a dad. And so many people right now are growing up without a dad. And this ass has the balls to say that there's a problem with the Our Father because it has patriarchal connotations. Are you out of your mind, dude? Fathers are so important. And this guy's trying to take away the number one. And he calls himself a bishop. He should be defrocked and thrown out of the church. It's hard. It is hard to talk about. It makes it hard. It's hard for me to think about growing a business and then talking about this thing every Sunday, but I feel like God's helping me out. And I feel like I owe it to him to stand up for what I believe in. Strong men are a good thing. You know, lots of people crap on, strong men nowadays. But if a war starts coming around or China attacks the US, like God forbid, or something like that happens, a lot of people are going to be looking to men and be like, hey, can you protect us? What's that purple-haired soccer player, right? She's probably not going to be signing up to go fight the battle. She's super strong on the soccer field when everything's peachy keen. And this isn't like, I'm not saying this is, I'll just say this because I can start going like really down a tangent and I don't want to just vent here. So many people nowadays, they get like this really great so-called education, right? And they make all these points. And nowadays, I'm not a super smart individual. I'm not brilliant. I'm not a great writer. I feel like I'm decent at talking, but I'm not a great orator, right? Like Obama, great orator. Glenn Beck, great orator. I'm kind of like, actually, I don't even know. I don't even know like a good example. But nowadays, the arguments are so bad. The arguments are so bad that you literally just have to sit down and use a little bit of common sense. And if you can do that, you can realize and you can point out the stupidity, the sheer stupidity of what is going on. Look at this guy. Let's zoom in on his stupid face. One of the things that my priest said, I kind of totally went off a tangent. Well, I did talk about what he said, but the priest at my church, and I don't think he would mind me saying his name, Monsignor Perry, Rockville, Maryland. He said, the devil's at work, and if you don't think the devil's at work nowadays, you're just not paying attention. And I am like new to coming into the Catholic Church, but there is evil going on in this world, and when you have bishops, this ridiculous person right here talking about how the Our Father is problematic because it has patriarchal connotations. Where is the outrage? Like, where is the outrage by the lay people to get this person thrown out stat? This is one of the issues that I have with giving churches money nowadays. Look at this guy. Look at what he's wearing. Look at the hall that he's in, the amount of money that this guy has access to, the amount of power. He should be, not literally, but he should be metaphorically thrown out on the street, never to be heard from ever again. And I'm sick and tired of stuff like this happening because this person's weak. Look at this man. That's not a strong man. Look at him. Like, you can just tell he's just weak. You can just tell from like their eyes. Like, you are weak, sir. You are weak. Now, I want to bring it back to like a promising point, but I was listening to a podcast yesterday. And if you're into like financial stuff, there is a lot of really good financial information that you can get on YouTube. And it sounds crazy, but you listen to like Fox News Business or what are like all the mainstream financial channels, right? Whatever they are, like Yahoo Finance, like Apple News or whatever, Apple Finance or what, all these like mainstream publications. Literally nobody ever calls, like when the 2008 crisis happened, everyone was like, oh my gosh, what happened, right? The one person I can name is Peter Schiff, right? He was calling that for years. And he was on all these mainstream media outlets being like, hey guys, and the guy from The Big Short, I forget his name, but there were people calling this and people just laughed at them. They just laughed at them, right? And just give me a second because I'm going to tie this in. But there is so much, there's just a wealth of information that you can get on YouTube nowadays from people who really understand the markets. And when everyone's like, hey, everything's perfectly fine, you can just look around and everybody, this is where it's like, it just takes common sense. All the higher ups, all the like the lords of finance are telling all the peons down here, and that's me, right? Like all of us peons down here who don't have access to like hundreds of millions and billions of dollars, right? They're like, hey guys, everything's fine. You don't need to worry about anything. We got it all under control. And you don't have to be a finance expert anymore to know that the way the economy is run nowadays is not fine, right? And I was listening to this guy, and I'm going to pull up his YouTube channel because he's absolutely fantastic. I just want you to. His name's Adam Taggart. This guy right here, Wealthion. You look up his channel, this guy, Adam Taggart, and he has on so many different types of people. And the thing is he has on bears, bulls, like in terms of like a bear market, bull market, like someone who thinks that the stock market's going to crash is called like a bear. So, but he doesn't just have on one type of person. He has on all these different types of people. And then he just lets you make your own decisions. And he just gives you the information to make informed decisions about the financial future of you and your family based on all this information that he provides free access to. I mean, some of these people are absolute giants in the industry, and you can just go on here and listen to like hour and 30 minutes, hour and 30 minutes, hour. I mean, this is like the Joe Rogan of finance. I mean, if you don't, I've listened to a lot of like, I kind of go into like these different areas, and like this guy, Mark Faber, this guy is like Mr. Doom and Gloom, right? But he shows you this side because why not? Why should you not have access to this person's viewpoint? You should be able to listen to his viewpoint and then agree or disagree. This guy's channel is its own kind of marketplace of ideas. And he has on all these differing viewpoints of people who think that the market's going to go one way. Is it going to drop, or is it going to be better, or whatever? And it's up to you to just listen and then figure out who makes the most sense, right? And he just had on someone, and I know I'm kind of going all over the place, but I just wanted to let people know that because, I mean, this guy is fantastic. He's so great. I believe he was you got a shout out. I'm blanking on the word, but he was featured. He was featured, I believe, it was either Fortune or the Wall Street Journal or something like that, because his channel has absolutely blown up. He started it like 2 years ago. He's got 284,000 subscribers. He's doing absolutely awesome. But the reason I wanted to talk about this guy is because there's a man named Neil Howe, and he wrote this book called The Fourth Turning. And he's a historian. And basically what it is it's called The Fourth Turning in American Prophecy, what the cycles of history tell us about America's next rendezvous with destiny. And basically what he talks about is he goes back 500 years in this book and talks about how people and history runs in cycles. And this just makes sense, right? Because if you, like the people here, if you were born in Nazi Germany in 1915, you probably would have been a Nazi. And people are like, I would have never been a Nazi. It's like, yeah, probably. You probably would have. You probably would have. And if you weren't like a hardcore Nazi, you probably wouldn't have stood up. You probably would have just gone with the flow, because that's what everybody did. Like, you're not special, right? There are very few people who stand above the crowd, right? So maybe you are that one special person. But the vast majority of people, if they were born, in 1915 in Germany, they would have fought in World War II for the Nazis, right? And if you were born, back in 1800, you would have been a slave owner if you could have owned slaves. And if you're born today, right, you think all of that's bad because you were born in a different time, right? But these cycles kind of just repeat. And what I mean by that is that the easiest explanation I can give is going back to the beginning of American history. We started with the Revolution. 80 years later, we had the Civil War. 80 years later, we have World War II. And now 80 years later, again, we're going through this super tumultuous time. And everybody seems to think we're like on the verge of like some type of world war or civil war here in the United States. But what this guy talks about is basically, this basically has to happen, because each generation basically forgets the lessons that the generation learned 80 years ago when they went through that really tough time. And as you start to forget that, you basically are forced to learn that lesson all over again. History forces you, like just the laws of like human nature force you to learn those lessons all over again. And then you come out of it and then you rebuild. And so what this guy talks about, and he called this back in 1987, I think it was, is when he wrote the book, 1997. And so this was like before everything got crazy. I mean, back during like, Bill Clinton, people thought like stuff was crazy then. But I mean, now we look back at 97, we're like, oh, that would be nice to go back to 97, right? Everything was chill, everything was pretty relaxed. And so what this guy talks about is we're right in the middle of what he calls the fourth turning. And so he equates it to seasons. So you have like spring, summer, fall, and winter. And so the World War II would have been like winter, right? That would have been the fourth turning. But coming out of that, like the late 40s, 50s, and 60s would have been the first turning. And then, late 60s, 70s, 80s would have been the second turning, right? Late 80s, 90s, 2000s would have been the third turning. And then starting around 2008 with the financial crisis and going all the way through to like 2030-ish is the fourth turning. So we're like kind of right in the middle of what he predicted, coming up on like 30 years ago now, what would be happening. But what comes out of this is good things, right? And I took a really long time to explain that, so maybe I lost a lot of people there. But I think a lot of people, one of the things that he was talking about, and this guy that I was talking about, Adam Taggart, he just interviewed him right here. So these are, the latest videos. So he just interviewed him this week. And one of the things that he was talking about, and I'll just stop sharing because that's pretty much it. But he basically is saying that we have, basically another decade. He was kind of surprised that this one's taken a little bit longer. He thought by the time we were in like the mid 2020s, like 2024, 25-ish, we'd be kind of like, it'd be kind of climaxing and then we'd be kind of getting out of it. But he said this one's taking like a little bit longer. It's not like a hard and fast rule. It doesn't have to be 80 years. So this was just taking a little bit longer. But it kind of makes sense. This is one of those things that you don't have to be like a great, just use your common sense. Nowadays, like people just need to use their common sense. And a lot of things right now are going absolutely bananas. I mean, we have the bishop of whatever his name was saying that the Our Father is like a big problem. I mean, we've been saying this prayer for 2,000 years and now it's a problem. Says who? You're an idiot. And we just need to call out idiots for being idiots, and we can't mince words anymore. We can't say, oh, well, you might have a point and like, I understand this, but no, it's a stupid argument. Like end of discussion, and we just can't placate these types of ideas anymore because I've always been, like conservative, but I think that there's been a lot of people like pushing like politics and churches and all these things left. And this is one of the things that my priest was talking about the other day is last week was, like the devil is at work. I mean, who but the devil can get the bishop of whatever it's called, that dweeb, to say that there's a problem with saying Our Father because it has patriarchal connotations. Like, if that's not the work of the devil, then what is? What is? And so I guess my point in saying all this is that I believe we're going through like a really tough time, but it's going to require people to stand up for what they believe in. And if we can stand up for what we believe in, on the other side of this is going to be like one of the best times in American history. But it's going to require people to stop cowtailing to these stupid ideas, right? Just enough. No more stupid ideas, right? We're not going to cut out Father from the Our Father. It's just an asinine, ludicrous, and stupid idea. And anyone who suggests such a thing should be defrocked and thrown out of the church. And we as lay people need to force this to happen. That person should never, and I don't think he's like the Church of England. So the Church of England, right, is not the Catholic Church. It's like the Church of England. But the Church of England didn't used to believe stuff like that. I mean, they had some issues with the Catholic Church, but they didn't used to have issues with the Our Father. I mean, this is how far we've come. So this is getting really long. I just wanted to say that, like, it seems like a lot of things are just absolutely falling apart. But if you go listen to this guy's podcast, again, Wealthy on Adam Taggart, he interviews this guy, Neil Howe, and he talks about how, basically millennials right now, a lot of millennials are totally depressed. And what he said is that the new world is basically going to be shaped by and for millennials, because he said every 80 years, that generation, he was talking about Gen Xers and how, and this kind of just makes sense. Like, if you just know Gen Xers, and these are like people who are my parents' age. So like people who are like 50s, 60s, maybe early 70s. And then like 70s, 80s, 90s would be, baby boomers. But they just kind of go along. They just kind of do their thing. They're not really trying to completely redo the status quo. They're not trying to like totally, because everything's kind of going okay for them, right? But a lot of people our age are like, this does not seem right, right? And for a long time, I've always been like a strong capitalist, but what we have right now is not capitalism. We do have capitalized gains and socialized losses for the big companies at the top, and they're all in the politicians' pockets, and they're all like, giving each other, handouts and getting into each other's pockets and stuff like that. And there will come a time, I think, and we just have to get a little bit older, a little bit wiser. There has to be some leaders who come around from my generation, and maybe like just a little bit older than me. But we need some real leaders who are like, enough's enough. We're not voting for these crackpots anymore. You're 80 years old, out you go. You're gone. You're part of an old world and you're gone. We're not doing this anymore. We're not giving banks bailouts. We're not giving pharmaceutical companies massive amounts of monies. We're not paying these, defense contractors billions and billions of dollars to go invade some country so we can get their oil when we have a bunch of oil right here. It's stupid, right? And there's so many people like millennials that I think are going to get on board and finally be like, listen, we're all at each other's throats, and it's all these other people, and I'm not saying, the thing is like Gen Xers, they're not the problem. It's a few people in that generation, like Gen Xers and baby boomers, who are in power, and they're not leaving. This is another thing that this guy, Neil Howe, was talking about. He's like, they're not retiring, right? People in Congress, they're just not leaving. Mitch McConnell, Dianne Feinstein, Joe Biden, what's that swamp creature? Lindsey Graham, like, out you go, goodbye. And I think sooner rather than later, people are going to realize enough's enough. And the same is going to hold true for churches. And so to bring this all back, my point is that it's hard for me to be an entrepreneur right now and to talk about these issues because they're very divisive. But people need to stand up for stuff like this. People need to stand up for the truth. And it is true and honest to say that you don't take father out of the Our Father. And any bishop who says that should be thrown out on the street. So, not the most positive Sunday video ever, but I think, and I said this, I think, in like one of the last couple of weeks podcasts, but we have a real opportunity to change the course of history. We are literally living through history right now. Like, things cannot keep going the way that they're going. Look at like the way that the debt is running. People are like, oh, American debt's never going to be a problem. How can you just keep like printing money or do whatever? You can't just keep taking on debt as a country. Eventually this will catch up to us. And whenever it does, that's when we're really going to have to face these problems. And it's going to be really hard, but it's finally going to wake us up to the reality of the insanity that we've been living in for so long. And once we wake up to that, then we'll be able to start anew. And once we can start anew, we can get all these other people out of office, because finally we'll be like, no, y'all are done. You screwed everything up. You're done. We have a new vision for the world, basically. And I'm not saying like I am a strong capitalist, but right now we don't have capitalism. There is no free flow of ideas. There's censorship. People say, oh, you can't do this. You can't do that. It's like, what are you talking about? We need to just get back to like original founding principles, right? And we've come a long way, and a lot of things have gotten better, right? Of course, like getting rid of slavery was one of the best things that, frankly, America probably ever did, right? We literally fought an entire civil war. Hundreds of thousands of Americans shed their blood to get rid of that terrible evil. And then after the Civil War, it like America boomed and it was this whole prosperous time. And yes, was there still a lot of bigotry like afterwards? For sure. But I feel like we have started to really get past that. And right now, like there's just like, there's no reason for us to be fighting. There's no reason for it, right? There's just a bunch of super wealthy people who just want people to fight, right? Politicians, they just want people to fight. And now this is getting even longer, and I don't know, probably no one's listening at this point anyway, but I'm just getting tired of it. And I think a lot of people are there. And this is what happens in a fourth turning. People my age, in my generation, I'm honestly super fortunate because I have a house, I have 2 kids, I have a good job, my wife has a good job, we have reliable, stable jobs, and that's super fortunate for my generation. But a lot of people in my generation don't feel that, and they're getting desperate. And when people start getting desperate, good things don't happen when people are desperate, and a lot of people are starting to feel desperate right now. And we're being told by all these people in power, like, everything's fine, elect me and everything will be fine. And it doesn't seem like anything's getting fixed, right? The church is like, hey, just keep supporting us and everything will be fine. It's like, okay, what happened to all those priests that like raped a bunch of kids? Can you tell me what happened to them? No. Nobody's telling us anything about that. There's no like real account. I mean, there should be like trials, tribunes, like complete accounting of all the books. Like, where are all the priests that ever happened to? Where are they? Like, there should be open. Like, I don't know if you'd want to like open everything up to like the whole public, but there should be like a bunch of like groups or formations or whatever that go to churches and they literally go through all their books, and they're run by a bunch of lay people, and lay people from that church have to be involved so that the church knows, that a respectable member of that community is involved in this process and they're trustworthy and they're outside of the church, they're outside of the power structure. And then we can really start to like solve these problems. And I think that, people my age, we're done. We're not going to sit by, it's going to take a little bit more time because I don't think everybody's there yet. But once everybody starts to get there, I think we're going to make some really big changes. And so that's why I want to talk about this, because I think down the road, people who talked about this in the beginning will not only be rewarded by God, but I'll be able to look back and say, yeah, I stood up for what was the truth, what is the truth, and I didn't back down. And that's just not who I am. I'm just not somebody who backs down. Like, when someone says, oh, you can't do that, I'm like, sorry, but that's what I say. Like, no, you don't tell me. Like, you can explain to me why you think I shouldn't do it. But if you just tell me, no, I'm not listening to you. I don't listen to somebody just because you have power. That's stupid. That's what peasants did back in the day with kings and queens. I'm not a peasant. You could explain to me in a rational conversation why I should or should not do something. And then if I disagree with you, I'm going to make my own decision. And I'm going to do what I want to do because that's my right as an American and as a human being. So do what you want to do. Stand up for what you believe in. And I think there is light at the end of this tunnel. I think it's going to get darker before it gets better. But I listened to that last night. I can be kind of like a doomser, dooms depressing kind of guy, but I think there's real light at the end of this tunnel, and it's going to be bleak and it's going to be terrible. But history will be written about this time. This will be one of the most consequential, I believe this will be the most consequential time in history within the next 100 years. And we're the ones, like anyone between the ages of like 25 to 50 right now, in the next 10 years, we're the ones that are going to make the difference. So if you want to make a difference, if you ever want to make a difference in your life, now is the time to do it. What a blessing. What an honor. What a unique privilege. And I feel like I'm up for that task. Are you up for the task? Get after it. Stay safe, live free, keep the faith. And I'll talk to you later. See you.